Over the next 3 days, I'm going to be posting the remaining 15 Psalms. This collection all of them are titled A Song of Degrees. This is Psalm 120 through Psalm 134, 15 Psalms. Now, they weren't all written during this time period. 4 of them were written by David. One seems to have been written by Solomon. And the rest we don't know who wrote them. And some of them almost certainly were written as late as the Babylonian captivity, probably the return from the Babylonian captivity. So they do span a wide range of time. The reason I put it here is that this is immediately after we have read of the dedication of the Temple of Solomon. And I want to read this here. This is from the Institute Manual. I have read a few things from this in the past. We're going to read, this is in chapter 28. This is chapter 28, section 4. It lists all the different titles of Psalms, but we're not going to get into all of them. We just want to read this one part here about the Songs of Degrees. It says this: Degrees appears over 15 Psalms, called Songs of Degrees, and has been explained in various ways, of which the following are the chief. The ancients understood by it stairs or steps, and in accordance with this, Jewish writers relate that these psalms were sung on 15 steps, leading from the court of Israel to the court of the women. B. Luther, whom Tholuck is inclined to follow, renders the title a song in the higher choir, supposing the psalms to have been sung by from an elevated place or ascent, or with elevated voice. C. Gesenius, Delitz, and DeWitt think the name refers to a peculiar rhythm in these songs, by which the sense advances by degrees, and so ascends from clause to clause. D. According to the most prevalent and probable opinion, the title signifies Song of Ascents, or Pilgrim Song, meaning a song composed for or sung during the journeying of the people up to Jerusalem, whether as they returned from Babylon or as they statedly repaired to the national solemnities. Journeys to Jerusalem are generally spoken of as ascents, on account of the elevated situation of the city and temple. This explanation of the name is favored by the brevity and the contents of these songs. So to summarize, either it's sung on the 15 psalms, sung on the 15 steps between the two courts of the temple complex, or it's just elevated in either location or pitch when you're singing it, style of song, all this stuff. But the most likely is that they're pilgrim songs. They are songs sung on your way to the temple. Now, as we read in 2 Chronicles, I believe chapter 5, where it mentions that particularly the Levite singers sang as the Israelites marched up the road to the temple in order to perform the dedication ceremony. They ascended to the temple. Now, what would be more natural than to have a special selection of psalms written for the event to be sung while Israel climbed the hill to the temple? Even in these days, even when the Kirtland Temple was first dedicated, our very famous hymn, The Spirit of God, it was written to commemorate the dedication of the Kirtland Temple. It was first sung at that dedication. David wrote 4 of these psalms. It is not unlikely that he wrote them in preparation for the temple dedication. Now later, some psalms are written when the Jews are returning from the Babylonian captivity. They are again ascending to Jerusalem, where they are planning to rebuild the temple. So for them to write a few more psalms of this kind, of this purpose, makes perfect sense. So what we have here, most likely, is a collection of short songs that were written specifically for temple worship. Not for worship in the temple itself, not for while you're doing the ordinances, but while you're going to the temple. And that very likely creates, even today, the Spirit of God is sung at almost every temple dedication. So back then, when they came back to the temple for a Passover or for any of the feasts, what would be more natural than to develop this tradition of singing these psalms as you are traveling to Jerusalem and the temple? Now, most of these psalms deal directly with God and his temple and his people, praising Zion. When you read them, look for references for these things. It's hard to explain without going into a lot of detail on each psalm. But the basics of this idea, the basics of these psalms are twofold, from what I can tell. And you should keep an eye out, keep an ear out as you are reading. Listen to them, because they talk about the deliverance of God. How the temple is a protection for us, both, at the time there was very much a physical protection. As long as the people were faithful, God protected the city of Jerusalem and the nation as a whole. It's like God's promise in 2 Chronicles 7, that as long as the people are faithful, the Lord will protect not only the temple, but his city. But if they reject God, if they rebel, then God will reject them and reject the temple. And you see this thing throughout in a number of these Psalms. We get this idea of God's protection, God's deliverance, physically, but also spiritually. Because the Psalms, just like a lot of biblical prophecy, love dualism. They like saying two things at once. They also talk about the deliverance from captivity. Now, this can be the captivity from Satan spiritually, and the captivity from Babylon. It is also a reference to the spiritual captivity of the great apostasy in the last days, as well as the final restoration of the Jews to Jerusalem in the last days. All of these things can be seen in these Psalms. But the final temple, the real temple, is in heaven, and we look to it, and we are ascending. And as we ascend to the temple on the earth, our mind should ascend to the temple in heaven. Now, I will confess that I actually recorded my readings of all of these Psalms before I made this video. And so I don't talk as much about it directly in each individual Psalm. But I will probably, don't have a lot of time right now, but I will probably make a second video to end the series. So this is my introduction. I will then read the 15 Psalms, and then I'll make another video to do a more detailed analysis of the 15 as a collection. So look for that, and I will see you then. And on a final note, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bells, make a comment, share, all those good things that promote the algorithm and get the channel out there. My goal is still 500 by the October General Conference. We are now over 300, so we're doing good. When I made that goal a month or so ago, I had less than 200 subscribers, and in the last month we've gone over 100. So please help us out a little more, as I say, and we'll see if we can get the goal. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.